Hello, I'm Robert Emmett Hernan, the publisher of Irish Environment, and we're here for another in our series of conversations with Dr. Mary Kelly, the Director General of the Irish EPA. You're very welcome, Mary.
Thank you.
Mary, I wonder if you could, for our audience, give us a sense of your background, educational background, and what your career path was.
Okay, I started off as a chemist. I have a degree, first degree in chemistry, organic chemistry from Trinity College Dublin, and a PhD in organic chemistry from the same college. And when I finished my academic life, I went into the pharmaceutical industry, where first of all I was working in quality control, and then moved on to production, and ultimately ended up working in manufacturing tableting and capsules in a pharmaceutical plant. I took a career break for a short while, and I did, during that time, I had my family, I have 2 children, and I also did an MBA at the same time. So I did that in Dublin City University. And then when I was looking for a job coming back from career break, it wasn't too easy in those days to get back into the workplace.
What year was this?
It's a lot easier now. In 1980, the early 1980s.
Yeah.
It was kind of difficult to get back into the workplace, so it took me a little. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, so I went to work. I got a job with the Irish Business and Employers Confederation. They were starting up an environmental policy unit to advise companies on integrated pollution control, which was actually just coming in at that stage. That piece of legislation had just landed, so I came on board to do that. Had a very big role in terms of education, in terms of the Irish industry, and was involved in developing policy. So I was involved with the Department of the Environment, with the EPA, and with the companies, and I was kind of a go-between between all of them. And that's where I started really to understand about the environment and to become interested in the environment.
And did you serve on the board of the EPA for a couple of years?
Well, it's not exactly the board; it's an advisory committee to the EPA, and I represented IBEC on that for a few years. Yes, I did. And
what led you to get an MBA?
Oh well, I thought at that stage of my career that as a scientist, it's very difficult to progress within a company. I mean, you can get to be the quality control manager, maybe you can get to be the production manager if there's no engineer around, but it's very difficult to be promoted. And I'd never had any business education at all. All my schooling was in the sciences and languages and arts and stuff, but I'd never even studied commerce in school or anything. So I thought it was a skill that you would need in life. So I thought an MBA was as good a way of getting those kind of skills as any. And I've never regretted it. It was really, really interesting. It gave me a huge interest in economics and what's going on in the world, and And
very useful to your current position.
Very useful to my current position, extremely useful.
And when were you retained as the Director General for the EPA?
In 2002.
2002. And that was the result of open competition?
Oh, it's a public competition, and the Act which sets up the EPA specifies the composition of the interview board, which is a fairly high-powered panel consisting of the Director General or the Secretary General of the Department of the Environment, Secretary to the Government, the head of the IDA, the head of the Women's Council, the head of the unions, and the head of An Taisce, which is our biggest NGO. So it's a fairly high-powered panel. Public competition, you enter for it, had the interviews, and a number of names are then nominated or put forward to the minister, who has the ultimate decision, and the minister selected me.
And you're happy with that decision?
I was very surprised with it and very happy with it, and have been happy with it ever since.
Good. Now, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the sense of in what way the agency is an independent agency, and maybe that transition from your being hired through an open competition might lead us there. How are the staff hired at EPA? Are those hired through?
Oh, they're all hired through open competition. Yes, we have an agreement with the unions that I think almost all of our staff are advertised externally. We have an agreement with the unions that 1 in 3 would be an internal promotion, but as a matter of fact, our own staff apply for these jobs, and we always achieve that. So we don't have any internal, we have very few internal promotions, we have all external.
And is that different from people at the Department of Environment or hired?
I'm not 100% sure how they all work in the civil service, to be honest with you. But we certainly have a very open recruitment policy here. We're trying to get people to come in from outside. We want to benchmark against them. We want to make sure that if we're promoting people from inside, that they're better than people from outside who apply. So it's a very transparent, very open and very competitive recruitment policy that we have.
And is there any other sense in which the agency is an independent agent?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's just independent in terms of the people that we hire. And that is quite different, I think, from many countries where the staff, and particularly the higher staff in agencies, are politically appointed. I know the US is in that way, but so is Italy, and there are quite a number of other countries around Europe where some of the higher levels are appointed politically, but that's not the case here. The other area that we're extremely independent in is in our decision making. We're set up under the Environmental Protection Agency Act, and that Act actually has a section which makes it an offence for anybody, and that includes any person in the state, to seek to influence in an undue manner any decision that falls to be made by the agency. So that's a very strong piece of legislation that luckily we've never had to invoke, but I wouldn't have any qualms about invoking it if I had to. I mean, it's there in black and white in the legislation.
Now, what I thought it might be helpful for the audience to get a sense of the broad reach of the work of the agency by if you could take us through the different offices, 4 main offices.
Okay, yeah, we have we operate under 4 main offices. We have our Office of Climate Licensing and Resource Use is the first one, and that has it has an office, a climate change unit, which we set up in recent times because climate change was becoming so important. Like in the last 2 years we set that up. A licensing unit which actually processes all the licenses and permits that we have to, because that's a very big part of our responsibility. And a resource use which looks at, which compiles waste statistics, but also runs a very successful waste prevention programme. And a number of programmes under that. So it's really looking at resources and what the best use of it is. That would include recycling? That would include recycling, recovery, helping companies to to act more efficiently in terms of resource. And we have recently taken in water and energy. Now, we use some other agencies to do that, but we look at their whole all their resource use really, and encourage them to try and cut down on energy, water and waste production. And you actually were responsible for the setting up of REPAC as well, were you not? That was in a former life. Yes, I was indeed. Yes. When I worked with IBEC, I was involved in the setting up of. That was the first voluntary agreement that we ever did on the recycling side, and that was for recycled packaging. And I was on the board of REPAC for a while. Indeed, that was the first job I got when I came into IBEC. I think that's why they recruited me, because they didn't have anybody who could do that, and they brought me in to do that. So that was my first job, and then I moved on to the IPC stuff. And what's the level of staff within that office of the climate change? In the climate change, the entire office. There's 87 in the whole office. In that office.